Hello, hi again. My name is Emma. I'm a developer advocate for Google Cloud. I currently live in Seattle, which is a northwestern city in the United States. I am originally from Japan, and I really miss Asia, so I'm really happy to be here today. Today's talk is about friction logging and internal advocacy. I think you have, if you have checked the keynote today, it was about developer empathy and pain and how to help them drive their development, etc. So yes, we're going to talk about that. I'm sorry, the clicker just got shut down. Okay, cool. So what does DevRel do? We do a lot of things like conference and events. Of course, we have podcasts and YouTube. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we don't go to conferences or meetups as often as what we did. But we still have many channels online, virtual events like this one to talk about new cool stuff. But we are also developers. And in fact, many of us have former software engineer experience, like full-time software engineer. And at Google, DevRel is part of the engineering org. So we report through the same hierarchy, same organization as product teams. And at many companies, DevRel is part of such an org. So we can do our job, our engineers, and we represent software engineer as well. So DevRel is really a two-way communication. I talked about conferencing and events, but that's just one way. It's the overall mission of DevRel is to help external developers' success. And of course, one way of doing that is outreach. So we spread the news, we talk about new products, technology, and help users succeed. But there's the other way around, from the external developers through DevRel to product teams. We learn from external developers, we represent developers inside the companies, organizations we work for. And we gather feedback, we bring them back to product teams. We can act as a translator inside a company. And we are actually an internal outsider. Sometimes product teams know too much about their product because they are working on their stuff all the time. And sometimes when they test products, they do stuff, they instinctively avoid certain pitfalls and bumps. And sometimes organizations' products are too big for a single team or single developer. So it's really hard to keep consistency across the board. For example, when you have multiple command line tools, sometimes their options are a little bit different, and DevRel can help them become consistent. DevRel also represents external community. We have deeper relationships with programming language communities like Python, Rust, Go, Ruby, and we also have connections to special interest groups. Sometimes we ourselves are DevOps engineers or machine learning specialists, and we can help product teams understand the specific context better. We can put products into context. We have broader, deeper relationships with developers through direct communications, online forums. We often engage on social media, and we also have community-specific context. And we also have a bird's eye view, if I may say. This is a rephrase of what I said in the last slide, but we can maintain consistency across multiple products. We even communicate with people from other companies and competitors sometimes. And we work with open source communities, and we know the context better. So then what can we do? What tools is there available to do the internal advocacy? And here's the friction log. Friction logs are one of the tools we use at Google to capture an end-to-end experience throughout a developer journey. So this is really about a structure, because of course for outreach, we have conferences and events and meetups, and we have those tools to spread our voice. And for internal advocacy, it's sometimes challenging, so we need a tool. And through friction logging, we provide a broader picture and context to a specific situation. And these are often based on real-world scenarios. Like, how do I deploy my first Rails Guards application to Google App Engine? And this is a valid scenario, and you can write a friction log out of it. How are friction logs different from bugs? Friction logs are about emotion, and bugs are about how the program actually behaves. If certain things work, but sometimes you find it difficult, that's a friction, and you can write a log about that. And bugs are mostly about things that don't work, right? And friction logs are based on external user scenarios, and bugs are often about specifications and specific behaviors of the program. And new members do an excellent job writing a friction log. I'll explain this later. And bugs are often found by experienced developers and testers. Friction logs are scenario-oriented. You have a specific journey. And bugs are about components and features. You can write a friction log about multiple products, but if you open a bug about multiple products, you probably want to split into separate bugs, right? And because friction logging is an emotional journey, you cannot automate it. And for bugs, you are often encouraged to automate the process. You write unit tests, automated tests. This is what a friction log would look like. And this is an actual friction log template that the TensorFlow project uses. So you can find it on the internet. This is like a journal or diary. So you have name, date, of course, use case, product, and environment. But more importantly, you have what you did and what you thought in the color-coded log. For example, when you find something amazing, you just mark them in green. So you just keep track of your emotional journey. And when you find something a little bit frustrating, for example, you had to Google something, or you had to go deep dive into a specific product documentation, then let's mark them orange or amber, so it can be improved. When you find something that's totally broken, or you couldn't simply make it work, then let's mark it in red. And that's that could be a serious bug or a product blocker. And external user might just give up using the product. Let's take a look at real-world examples. Not really. This is not really a real world, but this is based on my experience. For example, when a product team is working on a tool and they just rebuild everything again and again, they accidentally add a library that's not listed on the manual. So, for example, when you launch a new virtual machine or new testing environment, you just follow the instructions, you install the libraries, and then you run the configuration process, the build process, and it fails with an error. Okay, it's easy to fix. What's missing is pretty obvious. You can just run apt install and continue the build process. But it's a friction, so you can mark that in orange. And then after fixing that error, you just continue building and you get the binary. So that's a positive experience. So let's mark it in green. And when you somehow run the binary, it ended with a segmentation fault error. So that's a blocker. I would stop using the tool if it failed with a segmentation fault. So let's mark it in red. So that's how you kind of gauge your emotion and kind of frustration levels and put different colors. This is another example. When you are running a Rails application in Kubernetes, of course, there are tutorials and you can also look at the Kubernetes documentation or cloud documentation. And you just create a new Kubernetes cluster and start deploying your application. And until a certain point in a tutorial, everything seems fine, and so far green. But when you're actually deploying your first Rails application, you need to run Rails DB migrate, and that's not obvious from the manual. You don't know how to run it, so you just Google it, Kubernetes Rails DB migrate, and a few blog articles comes at the top of the result, so you know how to fix it. So it's not critical, but you could still argue there is room for improvement. Like we could, for example, have a specific tutorial for Rails applications, or we can create a manual for language-specific or framework-specific scenarios. And then after running the command, everything works. So let's mark it in green. So friction logs are more about each steps and what kind of frictions or pain points you have encountered throughout the journey. So it's more about experience. If you need to do a lot of research before making something work, that's a friction. If you Google something, you had to visit external blogs, or if you had to look at a Stack Overflow question, that's a friction. And it's not just about fixing bugs. You can write tutorials for a specific scenario. You can work on documents, or even you can create a new open source library to improve the address a specific scenario or specific use case. When should we do friction logging? There are a lot of opportunities. Before launching a new feature, it's a great time to just review the overall developer journey. And when you have a new team member, as I said, new team members are great friction log writers, so why not? And when you hear something about products at events or on social media, it's also a good time to write a friction log. When you see something like, I just tried to do X on this platform, but it didn't work. And you know, you have heard of X and the product, you might want to retry that. You might want to reproduce that frustration by yourself. And of course, as part of DevRel, you might sometimes work on a demo or writing tutorials. You encounter an issue, and that's a great moment. You capture something external developers might encounter as well. Why do new members write better friction logs? Because friction logs are best written with technical expertise of a specific field or topic, but little to no insider knowledge. So when someone's hired at a company, they are hired for their expertise, but they don't know about your product, or they don't know about your corporate tools. So they are the closest engineers inside your company to an external developer. And friction logs can be used as an onboarding tool as well. So, for example, when a team member joins on DevRel or even a product team, they can try the product, learn about the product, and start contribute to the product by writing a log and find bugs, find areas for improvement. And not only can they contribute immediately, but they also have a specific artifact. So when a performance evaluation season comes, you have something to show. Hey, I was working on this. This is what I learned. So I would recommend you like new team members write a friction log or two on the onboarding process. And after finishing writing a log, you could, of course, you could just share it to the product teams, but I would recommend talking directly because often a log comes with an additional context, and you can file bugs and add action items. And sometimes product teams don't reproduce bugs, so you can help them do that. And you could write a blog post on this top right screenshot is an example. So there is certain features that's not supported by Kubernetes out of box, but you have workaround, so you can write a blog post about it. And you can, of course, submit a conference talk based on that experience, because obviously it's a learning process, and a lot of people might encounter that as well. And this is interesting. I find this interesting, but Stack Overflow encourages people to post a question and answer that by yourself. So you can post a question and answer immediately by yourself, and so that someone can find it later when they Google it. So you could do that as well. It's a good practice in general to designate a place to send logs to. It could be a mailing list or it could be a chat group, depending on how you communicate within teams usually. For example, TensorFlow has a specific mail address to send friction logs to. And if you open the testing document on TensorFlow, there is a section about expense report or friction logs, and you can fetch the template, and anyone can write a friction log and send to the development team. So it's a good idea to just have a mailing list or something that you can archive friction logs and share friction logs to. And after writing friction logs, you can file bugs as action items. For example, about documentation improvements, you could say something like update prerequisites, or include package names before CentOS, because some users might use a different operating Linux distribution. Or you can actually help product teams debug, or you actually know how to fix a problem, you can file a bug for that. And there could be some usability improvements, like add an extra command line option, or put a link to a manual, etc. And of course, if you know about a competing product, you can actually suggest a product improvement as well. It's important to help product teams prioritize, because few product teams have extra cycles. I think if you have talked to product teams and proposed some cool ideas, they sometimes might say, "Oh, that's a great idea, thank you, but we don't really have time to work on that. We already have plans for this quarter." And of course, good product managers know how to prioritize things, and they have their own priorities. priorities. But I think as part of DevRel, you can identify low-hanging fruits, like things that are easy to fix. For example, you can propose a simple UI change. Hey, please change the button text to something, right? And this submit is a little bit confusing. Can you change it to execute, for example? Or something as simple as documentation change. Hey, can you add a table of context at the beginning of the doc? And you can also actually write a proposal in Friction Log, like, can we add this to the knowledge issue page, or can we add this help option to the command line utility, etc. So these are not really hard to fix. Sometimes you could write a patch by yourself, but these could improve the developer experience a lot. And also, it's a good idea to quantify the impact, the potential impact. For example, when you see a Stack Overflow question with a lot of upvotes, that's a good sign there's room for improvement. And if you write a blog post about something, or if you know about a blog post about something, and that blog post has a lot of views or bookmarks, or it came on top of Hacker News, then you know a lot of people have problems or opinions about that. So there are ways to quantify and help product teams prioritize issues. So that's basically everything about friction logging. For further reading, there is an online article by one of my colleagues, Ajay Hamali. But if you Google friction log, this page usually comes up at the top. So if you are interested in learning more about friction logs, this is a great reading. So, but that's it. DevRel is about two-way communication. One way outreach, but the other way around, internal advocacy. And we can bring external developer feedback into product teams. And friction logs are a structured tool to capture end-to-end user journey or developer journey. When do we write friction logs? When we have a new feature launching, or new team member, or when we come across new questions. What to include in a friction log? All little steps, what you do, or what you thought, what you looked for, and those things, and make the emotional journey in different colors. And what to do after writing a friction log? You can talk to product teams, help them fix bugs, but also you can create more content based on that experience. So that's it. If you have questions, please reach out to @YURYU, and yeah, or I think we can take a few questions here. Sorry, my Bluetooth headset just got disconnected. Okay, it's back. So
Hey, thank you for that talk. I'm going to change the layout on behalf of the MC. Yeah, thank you for the great talk. Yeah, I thought it's going to be like a external feedback direct into your product team, but it's actually the DevRel people or engineers or people interpreted the external feedback and into the story or the customer journey or user journey and log to the log for the product teams. So really like the idea. So and I really like I can imagine the situation that you provide feedback just from the outside. Product team says no, but like you said, you can find a low hanging fruit, and that's pretty good. So I have a question. So, why do you think you kind of talk but why did you think that, new onboarding people or, junior engineers is very, good at for the providing those kind of frictionless logging feedback to the product team?
Oh, you mean why?
I mean, the benefit of having them, to
Sure.
write.
So I think part of the user onboarding process, new employees often try products and they, as they learn about products and technology, they, for example, go through tutorials, or they often do their usual thing, like when they have, for example, in my case, when I try a new cloud platform, I usually have a Hello World application that I will deploy to a new platform. So they, and of course, because I'm new to a company, I would encounter issues or situations that I further need to do some research. And sometimes you just end up asking that question to a team member or somebody inside the company. But these are all valuable feedbacks, and you can just capture the experience and make that tangible artifact that you can share to other teams, or you can just revisit during when talking to product teams. So that's the I think the benefit of writing a friction log as part of the onboarding process. You will have something to share. You will have something to talk about. So that, I think that's great. Always great to show have something to show.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. When you join the company, you want to contribute right away. That's one of the number ways you can contribute, right away in the speed. Okay, I think we are getting close to the end. So, if you have any further question, you can ask question to her, at the Twitter. So thanks, Emma.
Thank you.